In 2018, forensic accounting mapped $500 million in missing funds to an isolated coordinate, a forgotten rural town, with a population of under 2,000 people. These funds belonged to a corporate executive widely considered a visionary. Top-tier investors viewed his public image as impeccable, backing his ventures with massive capital based on the strength of a single powerful reputation. However, the company's internal records were a chaos of unaudited statements and opaque operational structures. For years, the firm generated massive growth figures while maintaining a total void of financial transparency. Massive corporate schemes rarely originate with a grand heist. They begin with the public's willingness to grant blind trust to the myth of the successful visionary. To understand the architect of such a scheme, we look to the psychology of the white-collar criminal. The fraud triangle, pressure, opportunity, and rationalization, is often driven by the specific traits of narcissistic personality disorder. This chart illustrates the psychological progression. Internal pressures to maintain an extravagant appearance trigger a shift into guilt-free rule-breaking. Under the antisocial column, the drive for status evolves into the entitlement of taking what is needed and creating a fabricated reality. This pathology creates an aggressive corporate vacuum. Within the firm, whistleblowers are targeted with surveillance and legal threats to prevent the illusion from shattering. Eventually, the contradictory witness statements and digital footprints left by the firm led investigators to one specific geographic point. When a narcissist can no longer satisfy their needs through legitimate means, they build a completely fabricated system to sustain the theft. Investigators arrived at the town's coordinates expecting to find a massive corporate headquarters that matched the firm's astronomical revenue claims. This image shows the industrial scale required to hold $500 million in physical assets. At the target location, however, the investigators found only abandoned buildings and empty lots. This is the mechanic of the phantom asset. In the 1960s, the DeAngelis scandal used warehouse receipts to guarantee millions of pounds of non-existent oil. The tanks were there, but the contents were an illusion. In this case, the architect registered a network of third-party shell companies to these empty residential addresses. On paper, the town was a hub of high-volume business partnerships. Physical opacity was a deliberate engineering choice. By choosing a remote, rural location, the architect ensured that auditors remained entirely dependent on the firm's own digital records. Investigating corporate ghosts requires extreme operational security. With billions at stake, the architect deployed private spies and hackers against any inquiry. The team retreated to windowless bunkers, using air-gapped laptops and encrypted burner phones to avoid digital detection. They used outdated black and white laser printers to avoid the microdot metadata that modern color printers secretly embed in documents, a tracking method used to identify the source of leaks. They spent months mapping a money trail of forged receipts and dummy acquisitions, tracing connections to the hidden ownership structures. Every path circled back to the same area. The disparate global nodes in the network formed the map of this forgotten town. Exposing modern fraud is a psychological war of attrition. Success depends on the ability to survive the counterattacks of a well-funded machine. Investigators eventually bypassed the encryption to access the company's unedited master ledger, revealing the raw data beneath the corporate secrecy. The data showed that the investigation had been pursuing a false premise. The team had been searching the town for a physical hiding place for the missing $500 million. In reality, the money was mathematically dispersed across the town's infrastructure. It entered the network and split into hundreds of microtransactions, looping back to artificially inflate the company's revenue. This closed-loop system of shell companies traded fake capital back and forth, generating a massive volume of transactions that created no actual value. The scheme weaponized financial complexity, using a total absence of capital to simulate astronomical success. Every single road, warehouse, and business in the town functioned as a component in a closed financial circuit. The town was the mechanism sustaining the loop, keeping the capital trapped in a perpetual cycle of fake transactions. This chart shows the terminal stage of such an illusion. When the mechanism stops, partnerships crumble, and the multi-billion-dollar valuation drops to zero. These masterminds are rarely financial geniuses. They are antisocial rule breakers exploiting a fundamental lack of corporate oversight. When investors prioritize momentum over due diligence, this pathology threatens the entire financial ecosystem. Massive frauds succeed because society trusts the spreadsheet over reality. To find the truth, we must look past the paper and inspect the physical world.